most illicit about the excitement I felt. I saw in my mind's eye the pale young man again, with his black greatcoat and red woolen cravat. Like bone china, his complexion had been. Strange to remember so vividly, and I realized now that in those few remarkable moments he had created for me an ideal of masculine beauty that I had never questioned since. But father had been so angry. I felt an unmistakable pang of guilt. It was late afternoon when the old trap carried us up the gentle slope from the little railway station, and we had our first real look at the house. The sky had paled to a deep rose hue beyond a bank of softly gilded clouds, and the last rays of the sun struck the uppermost panes of the leaded windows and filled them with solid gold. "Oh, but it's too majestic," I whispered. "Too like a great cathedral, and to think that it belongs to us." Richard gave me the smallest kiss on the cheek. I wanted with all my heart to jump down from the trap and draw near on foot, letting those towers slowly grow larger and larger above me, but our old horse was gaining speed. When we reached the massive front door, Richard and I were spirited into the great hall by the tiny figure of the blind housekeeper, Mrs. Blessington, our footfalls echoing loudly on the marble tile, and our eyes dazzled by the dusty shafts of light that fell on the long oak table and its heavily carved chairs, on the sombre tapestries that stirred ever so slightly against the soaring walls. "Richard, it is an enchanted place!" I cried, unable to contain myself. Mrs. Blessington laughed gaily, her dry hand closing tightly on mine. We found our bedchambers well aired, with snow-white linen on the beds and fires blazing cosily in the hearths. The small diamond-paned windows opened on a glorious view of the lake, and the oaks that enclosed it, and the few scattered lights that marked the village beyond. That night we laughed like children as we supped at the great oak table, our candles giving only a feeble light. And afterwards we had a fierce battle of pocket billiards in the games room, and a little too much brandy, I fear. It was just before I went to bed that I asked Mrs. Blessington if there had been anyone in this house since my father left it, years before. "No, my dear," she said quickly, fluffing the feather pillows. "When your father went away to Oxford, he never came back." "There was never a young intruder after that?" I pressed her, though in truth I had little appetite for anything that would disturb the happiness I felt. How I loved the Spartan cleanliness of this bedchamber, the walls bare of paper and ornament, the high lustre of the walnut-panelled bed. "A young intruder?" With an unerring certainty about her surroundings, she lifted the poker and stirred the fire. "No, dear. Whatever made you think there was?" "Are there no ghost stories, Mrs. Blessington?" I asked suddenly, startling myself. Unspeakable horror. But what was I thinking? That young man had not been real? "Oh, no, darling," she said, smiling. "No ghost would ever dare to trouble Rampling Gate." Nothing, in fact, troubled the serenity of the days that followed. Long walks through the overgrown gardens, trips in the little skiff to and fro across the lake, tea under the hot glass of the empty conservatory. Early evening found us reading and writing by the library fire. All our inquiries in the village met with the same answers. The villagers cherished the house. There was not a single disquieting legend or tale. How were we going to tell them of Father's edict? How were we going to remind ourselves? Richard was finding a wealth of classical material on the library shelves, and I had the desk in the corner entirely to myself. Never had I known such quiet. It seemed the atmosphere of Rampling Gate permeated my simplest written...